You want answers?
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended Shaolin Temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical rant.
All right, everybody. Got to talk a little bit about a story that I covered in the news today having to do with the potential election of Steve Cooley as the Attorney General for the state of California. The race is still close. It's still within 20,000 votes, but Cooley is ahead, and this will likely come down to a long count over the next couple of weeks and maybe even a recount. But at this moment, it looks as though Steve Cooley will be the next Attorney General for the state of California. 20,000 votes out of about 8.6 million votes cast. Now, as I was looking at this story this morning and surfing around the blogosphere, I found one of my favorite bloggers, Scott Morgan at StopTheDrugWar.org. And at StopTheDrugWar.org, he had this very provocative post where he points out that he was in Oaksterdam for Election Day. Now, I was there too at Oaksterdam. I was upstairs manning our live streaming coverage. Cannabis Caring managed to get downstairs, as well as Nate Bradley from Leap and a few other Prop 19 supporters were able to be downstairs on the street level when they encountered some No on Prop 19 protesters that were all wearing, I'll read to you from Scott's blog. He says, quote, "On November 2nd, I was walking through Oaksterdam with Steve Silverman when we happened to cross a group of misguided young pot grower types clad in No on 19 t-shirts, flyering the neighborhood with anti-legalization propaganda. Quote, 'Are you seriously out here defending marijuana prohibition?' End quote," Steve asked. To which their spokesman replied, quote, "I like things the way they are now," end quote. I suggested that if he really cares about medical marijuana, maybe he should stop worrying about Prop 19 and put his time and energy into defeating Steve Cooley. His response was classic, quote, "Who the hell is Steve Cooley?" End quote. Now, of course, Steve Cooley, as we all know, is currently the District Attorney of Los Angeles County and a fervent opponent of medical marijuana, as we told you back in 2009 when he issued his infamous 100% illegal quote regarding dispensaries. This is the story from 2009 in the LA Times. Los Angeles County District Attorney Steve Cooley said Thursday he will prosecute medical marijuana dispensaries for over-the-counter sales, targeting a practice that has become commonplace under an initiative approved by California voters more than a decade ago. That would be Prop 215. And his quote, "The vast majority, about 100%, of dispensaries in Los Angeles County and the city are operating illegally. They are dealing marijuana illegally, according to our theory," he said. "The time is right to deal with this problem," end quote. Cooley and Los Angeles City Attorney Carmen Trutanich recently concluded that state law bars sales of medical marijuana, an opinion that could spark a renewed effort by law enforcement across the state to rein in the use of marijuana. It comes as polls show a majority of state voters back legalization of marijuana, and supporters are working to place the issue on the ballot next year. That, of course, would be Prop 19, which just lost with 46%. Quote, "We have our strategy, and we think we are on good legal ground," end quote, Cooley said. Now, this is from LA Times, October of 2009, and now we're looking in November of 2010 that Cooley's strategy and his good legal ground may just become the law of the land in California. Now, we reiterated Cooley's positions in our analysis by our Deputy Director, Paul Armentano. And then my own rants, you can go back and watch the videotape of my rants against people like the Stoners Against Legalization that were named BZ420, the Canny Bus delivery system in the Bay Area, and J. Craig Canada, who writes for The Examiner. In all of those rants, I warned them about Steve Cooley and what danger Steve Cooley would provide to the Prop 215 patients out there. And of course, we also had our news coverage of Cooley's announcement to run for Attorney General when we warned marijuana consumers what a nightmare he would be. And the California Marijuana Report, which we play here on the Normal Daily Audio Stash blog and the Normal Show Live, had numerous commentaries on the possibility of Cooley as Attorney General, including a dire warning from movement icon Ed Rosenthal, who named him the drug war criminal of the week. So it's not as if people weren't warned about Steve Cooley. In fact, Americans for Safe Access, the nonprofit that's dedicated solely to medical marijuana rights, tried to alert patients to the dangers of Attorney General Cooley. They started a Not Cooley campaign in September and had the notcooley.com website to explain his dangerous anti-Prop 215 legal opinions. But other than that, other than us trying to sound the alarm, all the oxygen in the room was sucked up by the pro and anti-Prop 19 rhetoric. The Stoners Against Legalization blogs, numerous of them, Dragonfly de la Luz's blog, J. Craig Canada, Stop19.com, etc. None of these blogs made much of an effort to warn people about Steve Cooley, instead spending all their time and ammunition trying to defeat legalization. But Scott Morgan from Drug War Chronicle concluded the following, quote, "The great tragedy here is that the Attorney General race was so unbelievably close that the pro-pot anti-legalization crowd could have potentially affected the outcome by targeting Cooley, instead of spending the last several months espousing tortured misinterpretations of Prop 19. Now, personally, I don't believe that the Stoners Against Legalization seriously impacted Prop 19's chances because, it ended up with a gap of 8%, and that's way too big a gap to attribute to some fringe movement bloggers and amateur agitators. However, I do believe that they seriously impacted the demographic of young pot aficionados who never vote, but could have been motivated to turn out for pot legalization. And these young voters, being primarily Democratic voters, probably impacted Kamala Harris's chances. Now, let's take a look at the CNN exit polling. According to the CNN exit polls, younger people supported Prop 19 and Democratic candidates. When we look at the age group 18 to 29, voters under the age of 30 who made up 12% of the electorate, 59% of them supported Prop 19, 59% of them supported Jerry Brown, the Democrat for governor, and 62% supported Barbara Boxer, the Democrat for senator. So we have large support, 60% support among people under 30 for the Prop 19 and the Democratic candidates that were running. Now, I couldn't find any exit poll data for the Attorney General race, but I think it's probably safe to say the 18 to 29 vote would have tilted toward Kamala Harris. I did find some data showing me that Prop 19 came in third of the reasons why people under 40 turned out to vote, and I did find out that youth turnout decreased by 1 million voters compared to the last midterm election in 2006. Only 1 in 5 voters under the age of 30 in California voted in this last election, about 20%. When marijuana legalization and the latest Gallup polls nationwide show 3 out of 5 people under the age of 30 support it. And you got to figure that's nationwide, right? So California, the number of people under the age of 30 who support legalization must be higher. So the tragedy, it seems, is not that the no on Prop 19 fifth columnists could have put their energies into defeating Steve Cooley. It is that they may have depressed the youth turnout that would otherwise have been excited about Prop 19, losing the margin of votes that could have elected Kamala Harris. Now, I know it's impossible to measure why certain people don't show up and don't vote, because, of course, exit polls, by definition, only register the opinions of people who did vote, right? But let's suppose that those 1 million voters that showed up in 2006 but didn't show up in 2010, those young voters under the age of 30, the 1 million of them that didn't show up, let's just suppose that those 1 million voters, if they did show up, might have broken for Harris 51% to 49%. If that's true, that's a plus 20,000 vote margin for Harris, which is just about what she's trailing by now. Now, if those 1 million voters under the age of 30 voted for Harris like they voted for other Democrats like Jerry Brown or Barbara Boxer, about 59-60% support, the margin would be about plus 180,000 votes for Kamala Harris, and she'd be leading Cooley by about 2% of the vote right now. So, the Stoners Against Legalization, who warned that Prop 19 would lead to the raiding and closing down of Prop 215 dispensaries, may have helped elect the Attorney General, who has vowed to raid and close down dispensaries. And the sad irony here is the language that they opposed on the theory that it would allow pot-hating cities to end marijuana dispensaries was the language that would have given pot-tolerant cities the power to protect dispensaries from Steve Cooley. That's our Radical Rant for today, and you can check all those numbers and links to the exit polls that I just referenced. They're up on the blog at stash.normal.org. It's my latest post entitled, "Did Stoners Against Legalization Help Elect Steve Cooley?" I'd like to get your opinions on this in our second hour. Our phone number is 971-533-7111. Did the Stoners Against Legalization cost the Attorney General race for Kamala Harris? Did it lead to us ending up with Steve Cooley as the Attorney General? I'd like to hear your opinions on that as we go into Hour 2. For those of you listening to us on the podcast, thanks for joining us here for Hour 1, the Normal Daily Audio Stash. You can always hear our live podcast and Hour 2 at 1 p.m. Pacific Time, Monday through Friday, right here at live.normal.org. For Cannabis Carrie and Ganja John and everyone here at the Normal Foundation, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week with more news and interviews you can use for the cannabis community. And until next time,